Shifting gears now, we have Dr. Jerome Corsi, of course, who wrote the Swift Boat book that brought down John Kerry. He's written many other best-selling books. He was critical of George Bush and wrote books exposing the North American Union, the NAFTA superhighways, and I think was one of the chief focal points of helping expose that globalist plan to take over 84 of our interstate highways and put toll roads on them that really devastated, for the time being, the North American security perimeter that's back under Obama. But he's done the research, so has Philberg and others, and I've got to say it's very credible. And since then, they've gone from laughing at us and running that hoax in Vanity or in, what was it, Esquire, I forget the big publication that ran the hoax, saying that they had retracted their book about where's the birth certificate when they hadn't, to try to hurt the book. That was directly out of the White House, clearly. And now it's come out that his Social Security number was somebody else's and fake in Connecticut and was given to him by somebody in the government, that most of his family was CIA, that Bush, of course, reported, it came out years after, had sent delegates to envoys to Kenya to say, where's his birth certificate? And they said, it's been destroyed and removed. Don't you get it? It wouldn't be there to be destroyed or removed. Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, if it had never been there to begin with. And his grandmother says he was born there. But now he's in contempt of court. And Bill Clinton even showed up for court hearings he had to go to for sexual harassment. And so the Attorney General of that state is warning him. Secretary of State warns Obama, mishearing at your own peril. Joining us is Dr. Jerome Corsi. And I'm going from memory here. Wasn't it, what was the big magazine? I can't remember.
You're right. It was Esquire.
It was Esquire.
Yes, Esquire.
So how is that lawsuit going?
Our lawsuit is pending. The judge has to decide on Esquire's motion to dismiss. But as soon as the judge decides on that motion, the court ought to go forward with the case. So we're waiting. It just takes a long time.
All right, let's continue here, Doctor. Let's start with the basics for new listeners, because I was on a radio show in Florida on 8:10 a.m., one of our affiliates, a Doc Holliday show, and he was bringing up, what's going on with the birth certificate? Crystallize it for me, Alex. Why do we question this? Well, I want to ask you the same question.
Well, first of all, the birth certificate's been called into question from the very beginning. Obama wouldn't show the original birth certificate. He produced a short form certification of live birth. And then on April 27th, just before my book was going to come out, the White House suddenly releases this long-form birth certificate, which Donald Trump was also pressing, saying, where's the birth certificate? And what the White House released turned out to be a forgery. We do not have yet the original documentation released from the vault of the Hawaii Department of Health. I mean, if instead of releasing a PDF file, a computer file, and some Xerox copies, which is what the White House released of the long-form birth certificate on April 27th, the White House released an electronic file. And as soon as you opened the electronic file, you could see that it had layers in it. It was electronically created. Within hours, there were videos on YouTube showing that the file was not a scan of a paper document.
Yeah, but what about the Connecticut Social Security? When the guy's got somebody else's Social Security number, boom!
Well, in fact, we've been reporting, Susan Daniels, a private investigator, did the work on this about 2 years ago, found out the Social Security number Barack Obama is using was issued in Connecticut, a state Barack Obama's never lived in, nor did his family. I mean, even Bill O'Reilly on Fox News was covering for Obama, saying, well, Barack Obama's father lived in Connecticut when he went to Harvard. That's not true. He did not live in Connecticut, Barack Obama Sr. And this was issued, the Social Security number President Obama was using today was issued in the late 1970s. Barack Obama Sr., the father, was gone, deported from the United States in 1964. And Barack Obama Sr. never lived there. The card was originally issued to someone who was born in 1890. So let's say someone in the late 1970s, someone who is advanced in their years, maybe an 80-year-old person, a woman, never worked, suddenly wants a Social Security number to get health benefits, applies and dies. That's the kind of number that's perfect for identity.
All right, stay there. We got you on a bit late because of Skype problems. We're going to come right back, Doc, and I want to get into this contempt of court, what this means, back into the other fake certificate, and the fact that this issue won't go away, despite the fact they announced the whole bin Laden raid right after they put out the fake birth certificate to try to cover all this up. We'll be right back. But Obama, he didn't show up, and now the Attorney General of the state where this happened is getting upset. I want to get into that first, Doc, and get your take on that. But then I want to go back into the latest on the fake birth certificate.
The hearing was in Georgia, and it occurred last week. It was a Georgia administrative law judge who has the authority to decide, on this case, who should or should not be on the Georgia ballot for president. This is a presidential primary ballot first in 2012, this year. And the case was brought by citizens in Georgia, arguing that Obama was not eligible to be president under Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution, either because his father was a Kenyan, and that made Barack Obama a dual citizen at birth, not a natural-born citizen, or because the birth certificate was forged and false, and Obama, there's no proof Obama was born in Hawaii. That was the argument. Now, the judge sent a subpoena issued by one of the attorneys, Orly Tates, to have President Obama appear at the trial. And President Obama refused. Also, the attorney for Obama, a guy named Jablonski, sent a letter to the Secretary of State of Georgia asking for this hearing to be stopped. Secretary of State refused to stop the hearing, said that the president and his attorney were not appearing at their own risk. In fact, the judge had a motion to dismiss the case from the attorney from the president. The judge refused to accept that motion, said that he did not accept the legal arguments that Obama did not have to have two U.S. citizen parents at birth. And when Obama didn't show up, Alex, this is in a sense a default. In other words, the judge was saying, well, he could just issue a default judgment immediately against the president. But I think the lawyers appropriately for the plaintiffs said, we want to present testimony, because now there's a court record for the first time. It's historic, both in Obama's case and for a U.S. sitting president. First time their eligibility has been questioned substantively in a court hearing. And without the president or his attorney presenting arguments, if the judge makes a decision, hopefully that decision will be on substantive grounds now, not just a default, because a substantive determination by the judge that Obama is not eligible to be on the Georgia primary presidential ballot this year would be very hard for the president to overturn on appeal.
This is a big deal, and we're not seeing a lot of corporate prostitute dinosaur media coverage of this. They wanted to just come out with their hoax with the new birth certificate, have bin Laden come out a week later to kind of overshadow that and just move on. But more and more people realize just how illegitimate Obama is.
Well, it's shows like yours, Alex, and I think the work we're doing at WND.com, which we've been writing about this for years, my book, Where's the Birth Certificate? There's millions of Americans that know they're being lied to by the White House on Obama's eligibility. It's never been vetted.
And notice he released that the week before your book was going to come out. I mean, they were scared of your book.
That's right. And then the bin Laden, assassination or hit, whatever you want to call it, occurred right afterwards. So you've clearly got a wag the dog effect. And the mainstream media went right along with it. As soon as that April 27th, the White House released the birth certificate, the media said, okay, nothing to see here. Now let's all move on. They didn't question, is this a legitimate document? Why have we waited 3 years to see it? Why can't we see the original documents that remain hidden away in Hawaii, the original birth documents? Why do we have all these contradictory reports? The governor said there was only a line item entry in the index of births in Hawaii on Obama's birth. If the governor looked for this long-form birth certificate, why didn't the governor find it? I think increasingly the evidence is mounting that this long-form birth certificate is a forged document, which means ultimately a felony was committed in the White House on behalf of Obama, and the mainstream media is covering it up.
Well, I go back to the magazine article coming out and saying you'd retracted, you'd discredited, you'd admitted it was a fraud. Joseph Farah had admitted it was a fraud. and that you were offering retail back, which would bankrupt you. On average, what you probably sell a book for 35% of its retail to these big distributors to be on the end cap, maybe 40%. So that wouldn't just knock you out for the 100,000 or whatever books you'd printed. It would also hurt you in having to pay that money back. That was an attempt to totally economically engage in espionage against you, and that shows how scared they were. If this book was a bunch of bull, and if you hadn't brought down top globalists before, they wouldn't have come after you. We're going to come back and cover that. And remember, the Kenyan government said the records of his birth have been removed, criminally destroyed. And we can show those documents. They're online. I should add that Dr. Corsi's had a distinguished career. After he got his Ph.D. from Harvard University in political science in 1972, I know he's done all sorts of interesting work. What is it, for the State Department around the world and other things?
I have State Department top secret clearance through the Agency for International Development in the early 80s. I worked on hostage survival techniques for embassy personnel around the world.
And a lot of other things you can't talk about, obviously. So you're not just some wild guy out here attacking Obama or a crazy guy exposing the North American Union, which was official. I remember the Trans-Texas Highway, part of the NAFTA highway, official government maps. Ron Paul talked about it 5 years ago, and CNN said he was insane and it didn't exist, and they tried the same stuff with you.
Well, I spent 25 years in financial services. I worked with banks all over the world. I changed careers and became a journalist in 2004 after I co-authored with John O'Neill Unfit for Command, the Swift Boat book against John Kerry. And I've written, I think, 12 or 13, 14 books since 2004, 5 New York Times bestsellers. 2 of them were #1 New York Times bestsellers.
So they were scared of you. And again, that's the real evidence that it's credible. Not just using somebody else's Social Security number, not just the government saying his dad basically wasn't his dad, a sham marriage. That's now come out. Not just, I think one of the biggest things is that the Bush administration quietly checked with their government and got the letter back. And they said, well, it's been removed. Well, if something was removed from his birth, there wouldn't be anything to remove if he wasn't born in Kenya.
Well, that's right. I did extensive research in Kenya. I was in Kenya. I was detained in Kenya, deported from Kenya for wanting to do a press conference revealing the ties between Obama and Odinga, who's now the prime minister. Look, the Kenyan government has notified the U.S. government there's reason to believe that there was a systematic destruction of birth records in Kenya so as to remove the evidence of Obama's birth in Kenya. And the documents are missing, not because they never existed, but the birth documents in Kenya are missing because the government removed them from the public files. Alex, the reason the attorney for the White House did not show up in the Georgia hearing is because the White House knew they would lose. If these issues were really adjudicated in a fair court or given a fair hearing to the American people, I think shows like yours would bring the truth forward, and the president can't stand the light of day on these issues. The real documents, the original birth documents in Hawaii that are supposed to exist, are still under seal. They're still secret. You can't see them. I can't see them. We have to believe the Xerox copies handed out by the White House and the electronic file. There was no electronic birth certificate in 1961. It's a complete forgery. It was created on a computer, and it's a lie. And the American people, I think, are catching on to this. Barack Obama has lied about being adopted in Indonesia. It was Barry Soetoro or Barry Soebarka. We have that information now in his mother's passport application. When she removed Barry Soetoro from her passport, put down Soebarka, when they were in Indonesia, when Barry Soetoro, what is his real name, was there from ages 6 to 10. We don't have school records. You can't get his applications to Occidental or Columbia or Harvard, or whether he got foreign student loans. Can't get his passport records. This is the most hidden president, that we've ever had in American history. And it's that way for a reason, because Barack Obama cannot stand for American people to know the truth, which is he's not a natural-born citizen. He gave up his citizenship, natural-born citizenship, when he was adopted in Indonesia. His father was Kenyan. which should have disqualified him from the beginning, and he's lied about being born in Hawaii. So the entire public life of Barack Obama is nothing but a lie, and it has to be protected by the mainstream media, because the mainstream media doesn't want the American people to know we've got a political media. The First Amendment is largely dead.
Now, I want to get any other points you've got to make on this subject and then shift gears on something you predicted more than a decade ago, this derivatives-induced global meltdown, and then also how Iran ties into this. You were on with us, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, and you said, look, you're going to see more covert actions inside Iran. The war has already begun. Now that idea that the war is actually going on for a while is now basically admitted.
Yes, that's right. But just to go back to the finish off on Obama, what I want people to be aware of is not only is Georgia the state where the Obama's right to be on the ballot is being contested, is not being eligible. There's like 5 other states. I think there's going to be eligibility challenges in every state. Just takes one voter in a state to challenge the eligibility. And also, Sheriff Arpaio in Maricopa County is conducting a law enforcement investigation of Obama's birth certificate and of his eligibility to be president.
And notice as soon as that started, the feds basically raided him for human rights violations.
Then the feds came down on him. And look, this entire Department of Justice in Arizona is a corrupt office. You've got a corrupt Department of Justice in Washington that's got a political agenda to open the borders.
Wait, I gotta stop you. It's not enough to call them corrupt with Fast and Furious. This is a group of larcenous criminals. Even CBS News admits they launched Fast and Furious to blame the Second Amendment, and it's killed thousands in Mexico and at least 3 police and 2 border patrol here.
Yeah, the idea was to argue that the guns in the Mexican drug war were sold to them from the United States so as to limit the Second Amendment. I've got the evidence. I've written about that. The Mexican government was saying 80% of the guns are coming from the United States. It was all a lie. That was why Fast and Furious occurred. But now it's money laundering. The border is not about illegal immigrants. The border is about $2 trillion of money laundering going through the U.S. and world banks with the complete understanding and cooperation of the American government. I'm about to release that information. But look, the Arpaio investigation, which is going to come out on Obama, I think is going to be the first law enforcement investigation. It's being done very seriously. And the sheriff has said we're going to have the results of that in February. So that results are coming forward very quickly. And that's, I think, going to be another report where the American people are going to get more of the truth from a genuine, honestly done law enforcement investigation. And I'm very much anticipating what that result is going to be.
All right, Doc. We are too. Let's shift gears now into the economy and then segue into your view on where the Iran situation is going.
Well, as I predicted again, you're right. I've been writing about this meltdown. My Red Alert newsletter at WND.com. I've been doing everything I can to tell people that what we've got now is essentially an international Ponzi scheme. We're printing money. We printed trillions of dollars of money. Barack Obama's got $6 trillion in deficit. And increasingly, I'm believing that's good for the global elite because they figured out how to steal through money laundering a portion of all the debt that's created. I think that's really what this is about. Secondly, there's no way $6 trillion of debt created by Obama in 3 years, when it took the history of the Republic to get $10 trillion in debt accumulated. This is a conscious plan to undermine the economies of the world, to say what we need is one world currency, a one world bank. It's just like Europe. The euro ought to break up. Greece ought to cause the first country to leave the euro. Instead, the globalists are pouring trillions of dollars in euro. The Federal Reserve just put $1 trillion into euro.
And using the crises they created to grandstand as the saviors and say countries are going to waive all their rights now to this financial group. So it's an open financial dictatorship of the international banking cartel. That's exactly what Barry Goldwater said the Trilateral Commission was trying to set up in his 1970s book with no apologies.
Well, and it's what, again, I point to with Greece. Greece has just been told by Germany that the European Union will now take sovereign control out of Greece's hands on their own budget. And it will be the European Union that can intervene and tell Greece what it can and cannot do with its government operations. The EU is taking over Greece. And that was the plan from the beginning. Now, the only thing is I think that the globalists are going to finally overextend and bankrupt themselves, because I don't see how this house of debt can sustain itself any longer. And the solution is not going to be to go to a global currency or a global international monetary fund controlled economy worldwide. It's going to be to break up and to go back to national economies and local economies. Americans have got to understand, when I wrote America for Sale and warned that the globalists were going to create this crisis to try once and for all to get global control of the economy. And we've got to fight it by saying, let's go back to the 10th Amendment. Let's say where government is overextending, it is no longer exerting legitimate powers. I'm expecting the United States is closer to a breakup than it's been since the Civil War. And we're going to find in the next 4 years states saying they don't want to participate anymore with the federal government. Use the 10th Amendment, tell the federal government to take back welfare, take back the schools. The state will run its own schools. And those states which go this path of the 10th Amendment, I'm basically calling it a return to the 1776 nation. And I think it's the only thing that has a chance to save us from the globalism that will ultimately enslave every person on the planet.
Well, I mean, the globalists are so ridiculously transparent. I mean, they're running everything. They're standardizing everything. They're attacking every form of liberty. They're taking over even cities inside the U.S. and having them jack up power rates for carbon taxes and paying it to GE. Every week, it's billions of bailout money to move General Electric's X-ray division to China, or General Motors to China, or Brazil. I mean, these people, they're not even just globalist. They really hate America. And they always claim, oh, we're doing it for America. No, they want to fully bankrupt this country. Why is that, Dr. Corsi?
Well, you got to follow the money. Take a look at these cases like Solyndra and these other energy cases. Everybody involved knew that these were going to be bankrupt. And if the technologies worked, China would come in and do them cheaper anyway. But the people behind these companies over and over again are backers of Obama. People who have indebted their whole career to the globalist elite. And they get a payday. They get a payoff. And, you know, even the banks and money laundering. You get penalties. Well, major banks reserve a couple $2 billion for paying money laundering penalties. It's the price of doing business.
You and I would go to jail,
right?
But Wells Fargo and Goldman Sachs, and of course, well,
they go to jail. None of them are going to go to jail. Criminal penalties are going to get waived. They'll pay a couple $1 billion in fines, which is a cost of doing business.
But who's Wells Fargo caught with the $376 billion in laundered drugs? Bloomberg reported in just 2 years they paid a $111 million fine. That's less than 0.3% on hundreds of billions. And look, it's Warren Buffett, who just shut down the big pipeline from Canada to bring us oil. Bloomberg again reported, this is admitted, that Buffett is now going to make huge profits off the trains taking it to the West Coast to ships to China. I mean, these people openly are waging war against our country.
Well, that's what people got to realize. When we're running trillions of dollars of deficits, there's hundreds of billions of dollars being stolen by the global elite and put on the taxpayers as debt. When you get a situation where there's a major drug war going on in Mexico, $2 trillion of the Mexican drug business is no good in $100 bills. You know how much $1 trillion of $100 bills weighs? You can't move it. You've got to get it into the banking system. The bankers provide it. The regulators allow it. The Federal Reserve is in on it. And occasionally they slap their wrists with
And they see everybody else just trying to live as competition, so they write laws they're exempt from to shut us down. It's called monopoly crony fascism.
You're going to have two classes. You're going to have those who are in on the deal and who shut up and do extremely well, and then everybody else who's going to be facing unemployment, bankruptcy, starvation, ridicule, but if you dare oppose it, but if you dare speak out like I do, Alex, or like you do, then you run risk of being marginalized.
Remember the car dealerships? They said if you're a Chevy dealership, this came out in Congress 3 years ago, nobody got in trouble. If you own a car dealership and aren't a Democratic Party donor, we're taking your dealership from you, in some cases worth $3 to $5 million, and giving it to our people. And people were sent letters and told, you no longer are a Chevy dealership now that the government owns this. We're giving this to somebody else. You still own the land. You better sell some other cars now. I mean, these people are open mafia dons.
It's same with you're ridiculed as a birther because you dare ask for proof of Barack Obama's nativity. Well, the Democrats weren't birthers when they were questioning John McCain. It's entirely political, a double standard, and this attempt to marginalize. Who says the mainstream media controls what issues can be talked about in the public arena and which cannot be talked about?
But wait a minute. This is right out of Atlas Shrugged.
Yes.
Where in the movie, they're shutting down the people trying to keep the country going to give it to their monopoly buddies. This is right out of the book, shutting the pipeline down.
And it's going on that way on the international scene. It's the entire Federal Reserve sending $1 trillion to buoy up the European Union so the globalist scheme can advance a few more months without collapsing. And it's 1984 because they rewrite history. So now, we've written Barack Obama's entire history, starting from Dreams for My Father, is nothing but a lie. He says it's fictionalized, characters are made up. We get the documents, and we find out the Immigration Naturalization Service, when Barack Obama was born, did not believe his parents were married and did not believe Barack Obama Sr. was the father. And they say very clearly that if Ann Dunham, the mother, tries to extend Barack Obama Sr. as the supposed father's visa stay on this basis, we're going to investigate it and deny it.
And that did even come out in the mainstream news, as you know, last year. You talked about it before, and we had as well. But, I mean, here's the thing. How do they think they're going to get away with this long term? Because everybody I know is waking up. Are you seeing the same thing happen?
Increasingly. I think, Alex, your show's never been more popular. My books have never sold better. Even the book that Esquire tried to say was, repressed and we withdrew it, a complete lie. White House released the birth certificate. Still became a bestseller, and we still sold 100,000 copies. It's still selling very well right now and will again when the further information, these eligibility hearings start happening state by state. When the Arpaio report comes out at the end of February on the birth certificate and Obama's eligibility, the issue is not going away. The lie will not get buried. And Barack Obama's got to realize that eventually the truth will out.
You're right. We're about to go to break. Got a short 5-minute segment on the other side. I want to get into Iran with you. And if you can go till 5 after, too, because our next guest is coming up at 8 after next hour. Two short little segments coming up. I want to look at Iran, regardless of what side of this you're on. I'm not on any side. I don't want to have war, but it's just going that direction. We're going to get your view on how that's going to affect things on the other side. Jerome Corsi's our guest. He writes for WorldNetDaily.com, WMD.com. We're, of course, Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. Stay with us. India is saying they may start buying their gold in rupees. They had said last week it would be in gold that they would buy oil. But now they're talking about using rupees to buy oil. You've got this pressure to shut off the oil exports of Iran. They then import a lot of their gas in. Iran looks like they could be breaking a little bit and saying, okay, we'll let the IAEA UN inspectors back in. Israel says Iran's bluffing about blocking the strait. All of this is just really getting to a fever pitch right now. And the globalists, they want a new war because that'll create a political diversion for them while they're setting up this economic dictatorship in Europe. And that's not my words. That's the Financial Times of London, the big victory that Europe's agreeing to sign over all their rights to this receivership body of bankers from Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and others who engineered the collapse and who are profiting from it. So it's basically like Bernie Madoff becoming president because he ripped people off, or making Ken Lay your leader. But where do you see this going with Iran, and how does it tie into all these other factors? It looks like things are quickening everywhere.
Well, it's remarkable. I mean, since I wrote atomic Iran in 2005. I think right now, when I predicted, going back to 2005, is just beginning to happen. I think we're already in a war. The war has already started between Israel and Iran. All of these assassinations of Iranian scientists, the suspicious explosions in Iranian nuclear facilities, the cyber attacks on the Iranian nuclear energy industries. This is all orchestrated out of Israel, and my guess is also with the help of U.S. intelligence. The war has already started. It's a covert war. It's a shadow war. It's going to break out into a shooting war any day. All the signs are there. Iran is not going to be able to long sustain a real oil embargo. And the EU has said within 6 months they're going to begin embargoing Iranian oil. Israel has been recently, last few days, saying they think this year there will be a nuclear weapon created in Iran, and that it may quickly reach the point when it's too late to attack Iran. These are clear signals that Israel is saying a preemptive strike now against Iran is around the corner, and the green light has to have been given by the White House, despite Obama having supported, I believe, radical Islamic interests all through the Middle East.
By the way, I saw the text of a Council on Foreign Relations talk that happened a few weeks ago that was an addendum to the article about it's time to hit Iran. And they were in there discussing, well, we're going to hit Iran, but we've got to be ready to absorb their counterstrike and do nothing. And people were all gasping. I don't see the United States and Israel when they attack, or Israel attacks, when Iran responds, not responding back. I mean, that sounds delusional.
I agree. See, Alex, I've been working, people say, oh, I'm a warmonger, I'm in support. I've been working since 2005 to try to prevent a war. I think a war is the most disastrous thing here. Iran has a right to nuclear energy technology. We've lacked a way to work with Iran. Iran is crafty. I think this recent round of new negotiations and inspections that Iran's going to offer are simply a way of Iran buying more time. Iran has wanted a nuclear weapon, and they've been on loggerheads with Israel. And the war is now inevitable. When it occurs, it's going to be a regional, if not a global war.
Hold on, we're back in 1 minute. I want to hear from your deep research how you think this is going to go once the war starts, what some of the different scenarios are that run from bad to worse. We'll only have 5 minutes with you. We appreciate your time. He writes for WorldNet Daily. I'm Alex Jones with Infowars.com. After he leaves us, researcher Alan Watts joining us. Stay with us. All right, I even forgot we have calls on the birth certificate. I opened the phones up. I am so bad. From John, Brennan, and others. And I got Dr. Corsi on. I got into Iran. Briefly, what are some of the scenarios? How do you see this starting, and what do you see Iran doing?
Well, I see almost any day now we can wake up and find out that Israel's launched a preemptive military airstrike against Iran. It could happen any day now. And when it's not just going to be one strike, it's going to be an air campaign. It may even involve missiles. I would say that over a period of time, it could become nuclear on Israel's point. Israel could use some of its tactical nuclear weapons. Within hours of the first strike, Hezbollah in Lebanon will certainly launch attacks against northern Israel. Hamas in the Gaza will launch rocket attacks. Perhaps Egypt will join. You'll have a regional war within 24 hours. And the regional war will be unpredictable. There's going to be thousands of people killed because Iran has the capability of launching missiles, even conventional missiles, and killing thousands in Israel.
And you're going to have sympathetic responses by people in Israel who aren't coordinated or under any flag. They're going to start stabbing, shooting, and blowing stuff up.
And you're going to have, other involvement. Saudi Arabia is going to may or may not just stand by. Russia may or may not just stand by. Russia's certainly not going to see Iran defeated by Israel without some involvement. It's unpredictable. It's like what happens in 1914, or you get a World War I.
Yeah, that's how a lot of people describe it, as a big roll of the dice. And of course, I've also read that Iran's probably got a lot of stuff under their hat that they've gotten from the Russians and Chinese.
And don't rule out attacks in the United States. You know, you've still got Al-Qaeda elements, Hezbollah elements that are active and available in the United States. It may not be a massive attack like a 9/11, but there's certainly the capability of having retaliation terrorist strikes within the United States once the war in Israel, between Israel and Iran.
And to be specific, I mean, you don't mean the type of Al-Qaeda Obama used in Libya. You mean people affiliated with Wahhabists. But I mean, expanding on that, the Iranian head of intelligence, as you know, a month ago, said they would launch attacks in Tel Aviv and in the U.S. asymmetrical. That's quite an escalation there, because now the establishment could do a false flag and blame Iran. That doesn't sound too crafty by Iran on my part. I mean, I know they are smart, but that doesn't sound smart.
Well, it's why it's unpredictable, because retaliation or a step taken by either Israel or Iran, once a war starts, could escalate it, because it leads to a miscalculation, a retaliation, another step.
But that's my point. Clearly that was fake with the guy wanting to use car salesman to kill the ambassador. But then you have the head of their intelligence saying, we'll do stuff like that. I mean, clearly that would really help Obama if this war starts. That'll give him an excuse to grandstand, crack down on the general population.
No question. Freedoms will be lost in this, as they have been in every war, and that'll be calculated. But also, people shouldn't step back and think, oh, this is a war that Israel's just going to automatically win. This is not a board game. It's not it's not a computer game. It's not calculated how it's going to turn out in any way that you could. The
Iranians are a lot bigger threat than Iraq.
And the Iranians are highly intelligent, very well trained and equipped, capable of doing massive damage. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza are going to be coordinated. They've been funded and trained by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard was causing us trouble in Iraq.
Israel couldn't even defeat small contingents of them in Lebanon.
Well, it's possible. Iran's already put components of its nuclear program in Iraq, and we haven't known about it. It's possible that Iran has made agreements with Latin American countries that we don't know about to come to the...
Well, Doc, we're going to obviously have to have you back up. This is just out of control, and you're saying it could happen anytime.
Any day, and it's unpredictable, uncontrollable, and I pray it won't happen. I've done everything I can to stop it, but it's going to happen.
All right, you're awesome, and I apologize to the callers. We'll have to get them on with you next time, but I'll go to the callers with our next guest. If you believe in this information and want to support its viral spread, go to the InfoWars store at InfoWars.com. We've got the new G.I. Joe InfoWars t-shirts. We've got the incredible Pro Pure gravity-fed filters available at InfoWars.com in the store. We've got a new DVD, Scientists Under Attack, the Don't Tread on Me flag. We've got all sorts of different bumper stickers to help spread the rebellion virally. It's all there. Wristbands, citizen rule books in every order. Order online at Infowars.com today. The water filters, the canteens, it's all there. Infowars.com.